I'm proud to partner with Montana brand tools, high quality drill bits and drivers made right here in the USA. This is their 48-piece complete woodworking set, and I'll have a link to it in the description below, and we'll take a closer look at it later on in the video. I clamped up these boards yesterday for an outdoor tabletop, and after a few tries and a few failures over the years, I think that this is the best way to do it. And sapele is probably one of the better woods. If not sapele, maybe quarter sawn or rift sawn white oak. To join the boards, I used dominoes. And dominoes are going to make the joint much stronger, and it's also going to make it easier to stack the boards as opposed to biscuits, because you actually have a mortise and tenon joint, and when you're stacking the boards, they're not going to fold and the tabletop won't break on you or come apart while you're building the table. I did build one using Titebond 2. I should have used Titebond 3, but that failed. But I think that the Epoxy Fixo is even better than the Titebond 3, and I really like the qualities of how it works and the working time that you have when you're building a top. So to use the Fixo, you need to use a caulking gun, and it'll come with a mixing tip. So it's a two-part epoxy, and it's going to mix inside the tip. And when you use this, you want to put down maybe a 3 to 4 inch bead first before you use it on your project, because it may not be completely mixed. And it usually isn't. You'll put a bead down in the first couple of maybe 2.5 inches is still mixable or soft days later. So you want to definitely make sure that you put down 2 or 3 inch bead before you use it on your project. And if you're using a big project, or if you're doing a big project, make sure you get enough epoxy, because you don't want to run out of this halfway through a project and not be able to finish. And these tubes are kind of deceiving because they're really only like half full because of the way the mixing chamber needs to work. So if you're really getting into this and you're doing it a lot, you can get this big deal here, which is 2.5% more, and you can get this caulking gun or this different type of gun designed for it, which is kind of nice because the caulking gun does give your hand a major workout because it takes some force to get the Fixo through the tip. What's nice about this is the working time. You have all kinds of time to work with it. I would estimate at least 2 hours, maybe more. If you don't need that much dry time, this is a product I haven't used yet, but Total Boat did send this to me. This is the Fast Cure, and this one says that it gels in 25 to 30 minutes and sets up in 2 hours, and you can sand it in 3 to 4 hours. So it really depends on the project. But when I'm building a tabletop, especially in the shop by myself, I like to have as much time as possible. You're going to want to spread the epoxy on both sides or both edges of the board. So you'll put your bead down, put it down pretty heavy, then take a plastic putty knife, spread it around, because you really want that epoxy everywhere. You're going to put a decent amount into the domino holes, and then you'll join the boards together. And it can get kind of difficult to join the boards together by yourself. So when you're using your domino, you want to make sure to put the setting so you have a little wiggle room. So if you've used a domino, you know that there's basically 3 settings up here. One is with no tolerance at all. The next one you have a little room on each side of the domino, and the next one you have more room. I like to set it on the center adjustment there, and that just gives me enough room, because if you're off just a little bit and you've got epoxy on everything and you're trying to put it together, it's not going to go. And you don't want to break out the domino and try to make that hole a little bit wider once you have epoxy on everything. That is how I suggest to glue up boards for an outdoor table. Now, one other thing I'll talk about is the boards that I'm using. These boards are described as 5/4 S4S, sand and surfaced on 4 sides. are surfaced on 4 sides. When you're picking your lumber, if you don't have room to mill this material, you want to make sure that there's no defects or scratches or dings on the edge, because if those dings are in here somewhere, then those dings are going to be right in the middle of your tabletop. Yes, you could put them at the bottom, but you just want to make sure when you're at the lumberyard that you take your time, put the boards together. I actually spread these out on a kind of a mobile cart in the lumberyard, and I think I had to buy 10 footers, so I was able to kind of push them around and make sure that I had the best boards for the glue up. And you also want to think about grain match. Obviously, that's very important. So on this one, I think I've got a pretty good grain match everywhere. Because the boards are 5/4 by 5/4, which measures 1 1/16", by 8, which is 7 1/4. That gives me a top that's 29 inches wide. And I might take just a little bit off of this, but if there's no marks left by the clamp, I'll probably just leave it the way it is, sand it, and then I'm going to use this monster router bit to put a decorative edge on the top. But that'll be next time. What I want to do now is just take this out of the clamps and show you a little trick for getting rid of this epoxy. Now, some people might think, well, just take a chisel and knock it off. If you do that, there's a good chance that you're going to knock away some wood fibers, and that's going to create a defect in your tabletop. So I like to use a router. It works really easy, and I'll show you how to do it. I'm really excited to partner with Montana brand tools, high quality drill bits and drivers made right here in the USA. This is the 48-piece complete woodworker set. Let's open it up and check it out. We'll take a look at the brad point bits first. There's 6 bits, very high quality bits, really sharp, and they drill a super clean hole. This is a 1/2 inch bit, 3/8, 5/16, quarter, 3/16, and an 1/8. Here's a quick change. This is a pre-drill and countersink. That is also a driver. So you can see how quick and easy that is. For the most part, I keep this bit in my drill, and I almost always use it for pre-drill and countersink, and then I keep my drivers in this. Along with the pre-drill and countersink are a few different sizes, and to go with the pre-drill and countersinks are plug cutters, because if you're going to pre-drill and countersink a hole, chances are you may want to fill it with a wooden plug. So we've got a 7/16, 3/8, and 5/16. If you're installing hardware like hinges, a self-centering drill bit is very handy. You can see that this has a deeper socket, which will accept the driver, and then also accept the drill. So a very high quality, useful set. And if there's maybe a little bit more here than you need, you can also check out the 25-piece set, and I'll have links to both of these in the description below. I've got the clamps removed from the top, and I have a straight bit in the router. This is a router base plate that I made for this router. It has an open end, and you may have seen me use this router for cutting plugs, and I think it also works great for trimming the epoxy squeeze out. And I think it's better because if you try knocking the epoxy away, whether it's epoxy or wood glue, there's a good chance it's going to knock out some of the wood fibers, and that's going to create a divot in your tabletop, which is an imperfection, and that would be very difficult to sand away. So I've got a line here that's about 3/4 the distance of the table, and you can fast forward through this, but we'll go ahead and just remove that line in real time so you can get an idea of how it works and how long it takes. Okay, so that worked really good. I just don't like to use a chisel and try to knock the epoxy off because it always ends up removing some of the wood fibers. Now another cool thing about the Fixo epoxy is, as you can see the bottom here, it's squeezed out, but it didn't drip on the table, so you don't have that mess. So really, really easy to use. And I'll just get rid of this with the same method using the open base and the straight bit in the router. There's a few things that I forgot to mention, but I think they're important. Number one is the tip on the Fixo is off center, so you're going to have to modify your caulking gun. At least that's what I had to do. I used the cutting wheel and the grinder and just cut this so I could fit the Fixo into a normal caulking gun. The tip remains on the epoxy. When you're finished using it, the epoxy is dry here, but it's not dry here. So just leave the tip on the gun, and next time you're ready to use it, take this off and replace it with a new tip. I have one right here. That's what I was looking for. So don't take the tip off when you finish. That's a mistake that I made early on. As far as cleaning up the glue squeeze out or the epoxy squeeze out with the router, I think that's the best method when you're working with the epoxy. It worked great for me. If I were using wood glue, I generally use a wet rag. I get the bulk of it off with some sawdust and then scrape it off while it's still wet with a plastic putty knife, and then I use a wet rag. Some people don't subscribe to that method. It's worked for me for a long time. The dominoes that I'm using are the 6x40. This is just the pack that I have. I tend to use this on just about everything. I don't use the domino all that often. Probably will more this year when I start building some furniture again. But this seems to be a good all-around size. And I placed the domino, the first domino, 3.5 inches from the edge. You want to make sure you're not going to hit it with your router or your router profile. And then I put a domino just about every 10 to 12 inches. Now for those of you who have been following along for a few years, this is my third attempt on the outdoor tabletop. The first one was made with Sapele, and that's where I used the Type Bond 2. I also used a penetrating oil finish, and that tabletop failed. Last year I made another tabletop. That time I made it out of red Grandis, and I used the Fixo epoxy, and again the penetrating oil finish, the teak oil sealer, and again that tabletop failed. The seams stayed together, or the glue joints stayed together with the Fixo epoxy and the dominoes, but there's a major cup in the top, and it's a problem, so I need to replace it. Thank goodness this project is my mom's, or for my mom, so it's kind of pretty casual. So this time I will go ahead and build the top like I just did. We'll finish it with a marine spar varnish, and we're going to make some kind of cover for it, because it's not the rain, it's not the water that's destroying this top, it's the sun. It's out in the sun with a southern exposure at the Jersey Shore, 24/7, 365 days a year, and I think that is just a lot to ask for any kind of wooden project. So next time we'll go ahead, put the router edge or put the profile on this top, finish it, put it on the base, and I can show you what that red Grandis looks like, because it's not pretty, but you'll probably get a laugh out of it. That's all for now. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.